Recording
Okay.
has started.
Thank you, Carolyn. Again, my name is Dana Brooks. I am the CEO of the Pet Food Institute. Thank you for attending this webinar today, which is one part in a series of trainings focused on building our new labels. We've previously covered an overview of the changes in the first webinar, and the last month we focused on the intended use statement. Today, we'll focus on another change, the pet nutrition facts box. The last two webinars, please mute your phones. The last two webinars, we are able to easily finish in time, but as we continue through this aspect of the label, we are seeing more complexity. So there's more slides with this. So it won't take any more time, and I ask you to devote your attention to the program now. So again, I want to remind all of you that all PFI calls are governed by our antitrust policy. In summary, we are here to discuss and learn about the pet food label modernization, not to discuss favoring or disfavoring anyone or companies in our market. We'll avoid discussions or questions on items like pricing, market share, or any business agreements. If at any time we feel we are getting into the antitrust territory, please bring it to our attention, and one of the trainers will stop the conversation and will address it as needed. If you have any questions now for me, you are welcome to. If not, we have the PFI antitrust policy statement on the slide now, and I'd like to turn it over to Betsy Flores to start the rest of the program.
Thank you, Dana. I am the Senior Vice President of Public Policy here at PFI, and I'm really happy to be here with you today. Our series of webinars on the screen right now, today's is circled. These are open to anyone interested or wanting to learn about the label changes. Our training is meant to be specifically tailored for pet food makers, both PFI members and non-members. AFCO has done a number of labeling workshops, and they plan to continue those. PFI supports the AFCO trainings. Our members have volunteered to plan and present those and urge anyone. Please mute your phones. AFCO has done a number of labeling workshops, and they plan to continue those. PFI supports the AFCO trainings. Our members have volunteered to plan and present those, and we urge anyone to attend as we feel it works very well in conjunction with our PFI online trainings. With that in mind, today is our next in the series, which focuses on the pet nutrition facts box and specifically some of the detail on information found within the box. Keep in mind that we'll focus on some of this in our next webinar on calculations as well. I want to share our outstanding lineup of trainers for this webinar. I won't repeat the titles, but Jennifer Freeman. Jennifer is joining us today. She is handling and responsible for label updates for Ethos Pet Brands. Leslie Hancock from Hills. She is the chair of PFI's Nutrition Subcommittee and provides a lot of scientific input to PFI helping our industry. Leah Lambrakis joins us from Simmons Pet Food. She's contributed with PFI for a long time and serves with Leslie on the Nutrition Subcommittee as vice chair. Lena Lopez is managing the label changes for Wellness Pet. She'll take us through some of the key calorie and nutrient changes. Rebecca Prue is from Champion Pet Food. She's been there for 11 years in various regulatory roles, and she has experience with label review. I also want to make note of Patrick Folling joining us. I want to make sure Patrick doesn't get overlooked for his efforts for label modernization. He was PFI's lead on handling and storage statements. Patrick has generously offered to monitor the chat box for any questions that come up. My last comment before I turn it over, you've seen our ongoing agenda for upcoming.
Betsy, your mic muted. Can you unmute, please?
Sure. Where did I end up?
You wrapped up with Patrick, so next.
Okay. So one last comment before I turn it over. You've seen our agenda, our ongoing agenda for upcoming trainings, and see that the next month's training will focus on some of the nutritional calculations that we'll mention during this webinar. We urge you to ask questions, but may park some of those questions and handle them during next month's session. Also, remember that these webinars are being recorded and will be available on the PFI website for review or slides. With that, we'll talk about changes to PF5, and for that, I believe I turn it over to Leah Lambrakis.
Thank you, Betsy. Next slide, please. Welcome, pet food industry, to this webinar, which today, as already said, is solely focused on the Nutrition Facts Box section of the Pet Food Label Modernization Initiative. As many of you have already attended the first two webinars hosted by the Pet Food Institute, you are aware that the purpose of this initiative is to better provide transparency and clarity of the information that is provided on the labels of our pets' foods. The new labels are designed to be more intuitive and easier for pet parents to understand, with a facts box that is similar to human food labels. If the package is large enough to include a facts box, consumers will experience a standardized layout with clear boxed format with black or one color type on a white or neutral background. However, the reality is these are nutrition facts and they don't need to be in a box. So if your packaging is too small to accommodate the box, do not worry. There are plans for this that we will discuss. So stay tuned for further discussion. As for many of you, it will never be a box on your labels. Certainly, I can say from my company's standpoint, our product portfolio within such small packaging of wet pet foods, we will never be accommodating a box. So as we dive deeper into this presentation, we will cover what the nutrition facts content will include, spanning from the guaranteed analysis, the nutrient content, the expanded caloric information, and finally, the placement and detail around the nutritional adequacy statement. Next slide, thank you. Here we are providing a quick snapshot of the 5 key areas that are changing or being introduced with the new nutrition facts. First, you will note the expanded level of caloric information. The box that is demonstrated here provides a statement of caloric content expressed in common household measurements. These can be per cup, per can, and also in grams, and includes the calories the product provides from protein, fat, and carbohydrates. The nutrient quantities are also listed using familiar household units, such as cups or grams, making it easier for pet parents to understand and compare products should they wish to. There are 2 changes to the required nutrients that are guaranteed on the new pet food labels. First is total carbohydrates as a maximum, and then total dietary fiber also as a maximum, replacing the prior guaranteed analysis of crude fiber on our current pet food labels. Finally, the placement of the nutritional adequacy statement is now required to be included within the facts box or the package in paragraph form, ensuring it is consistently located across all pet food labels. As a reminder, the nutritional adequacy statement confirms that the pet food meets the nutritional levels established by AAFCO for the intended life stage of the pet. Thank you. So to sum up the introduction of what we will be speaking to today, what we are demonstrating here is a comparison of what is changing in color-coded sections. First, in orange, the guaranteed analysis and nutrient content in green, the nutritional adequacy statement in red, and the expanded caloric information in blue. This comparison was sourced from AAFCO.org and could be very useful to you all to help describe the changes to your company and to your customers. So with all that, let's now dive into the detail of each of these sections. And from here, I will pass on the presentation to Lena Lopez from Wellness Pet Food. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. Thanks, Kelly. The Pet Nutrition Facts Box is designed to place all important nutritional information in one central location, and all aspects of this box are important, including formatting. So let's review all required information for the Pet Nutrition Facts, starting with this part, the expanded calories and nutrient content. So right under the header, Pet Nutrition Facts, is required to include a familiar household unit. So what is a familiar household unit? This is something the consumer can find in their kitchen. For example, measuring cup, a tablespoon, a 5.5-ounce can. The household unit must be consistent with the feeding directions. This is very important, and its weighed in grams. Next slide, please. So we have determined a familiar household unit that we want to use. For example, a cup. So let's now figure out what is a whole familiar household unit. So the first thing you need to do is let's look at the feeding directions for the product. What are the units that were being used? Then you have to keep in mind that some feeding directions might be fractions of the unit, but for the purpose of the nutrition facts, we need to use the lowest whole unit. For example, a feeding direction might start at half a cup, but it can go up to 5.5 cups. But the lowest whole unit is going to be 1 cup. So the takeaway here is figure out the lowest whole unit and do not use a fraction of a unit. Next slide, please. So let's review what we have learned so far. So we have the header, the nutrition facts, and right underneath and to the right of the box, we have the familiar household unit and the weight in grams. So 1 cup, 134 grams. And I mentioned earlier that formatting is important. So a bold line between this and the next line of text is required. Next slide, please. Another requirement is a statement of calorie content, and this is going to be located on the left side of the nutrition facts box. So there are two ways you can determine calories, calculated or as fed. If the calorie content is determined as calculated, it needs to be expressed as calories per familiar household unit, followed immediately by a dagger symbol, then the number of calories. For example, here, calories per cup, dagger symbol, 309. Don't forget that you need to add the disclaimer for the dagger symbol. This is going to indicate that this is a calculated value and it's going to go right after the last guarantee. Next slide, please. If the calorie content is determined as fed, it needs to be expressed as calories per familiar household unit fed, then the number of calories. So for example, calories per cup fed 438. Next slide, please. Another requirement is to include additional calories declaration. These are what? These are the number of calories contributed by protein, fat, and carbohydrates, and shall be declared in that order after the from. From protein, fat, carbohydrate. The line should be indented to reflect that this is the component of the total calories line above. Next slide, please. If the total calorie content of the product is determined by feeding trial or fed, a dagger symbol shall be added immediately after the number of calories from carbohydrate. If you look at the example, the dagger symbol is right after the calories from carbohydrate, 188, then the dagger symbol. Again, don't forget that you need to add the disclaimer for the dagger symbol, indicating that this is the calculated value and it goes right after the last guarantee. Next is Leslie.
Well, good afternoon or good evening, depending on what time zone you are on. It's a pleasure to be here. Go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. So a long, long time ago, and how we got there is 2007. We all remember FEDIA. FDAAA. So the FDA had determined that pet food labels were confusing as compared to what was familiar to human labels. So that on the right side is what we recognize as our human facts box today. And the left side is what is the pet food label currently. And as you can see, that created a lot of confusion with pet owners because of some of the differences. Number one, on the left side, you see our macronutrients, protein, fat, and fiber were precluded by the word crude. People didn't understand that that was an analytical method term. They thought it was, gross or somehow undermined the value of pet food. Some of the other differences that are obvious here is on human food labels, as with human food trends, they were used to seeing carbohydrates, and that created some confusion as to why aren't there carbohydrates on my pet food label. So the pet food labels were kind of weird, but we were becoming familiar as consumers with the human food label. So next slide. So that is why we're here with the Pet Nutrition Facts Box. So some of the obvious differences that you see looking at this revision are crude has dropped away, not that the analytical method has changed, and we now have carbohydrate on the human label as is on the pet food label. So remember, popular human nutrition trends and what was familiar about human labels were how carbohydrates were represented. In fact, carbohydrates were not on pet food labels at all, as we saw in the previous slide. So what is nutritionally appropriate and the right way to talk about carbohydrates for pets became a question. And it was determined that not only did crude need to be dropped because that created misunderstanding and misinformation, but to satisfy that consumer need for families and how carbohydrates are represented on labels, we decided that it needed to be added to the label, but in a way that was appropriate for pet nutrition. So you see now we have total carbohydrates. So the total carbohydrate is the calculation of the difference of 100 minus the sum of the, no longer said crude, but protein, fat, ash, and moisture. And then below it, we have something that's also new on the label. We have dietary fiber. Crude fiber has dropped, and now we have dietary fiber. So there was a lot of conversation about how to represent fiber the most appropriate way and equitably from a nutrition standpoint. There's fiber very different, fiber types are very different, fiber calculations and analytical methods are very different. So it took a lot of debate and collaboration amongst the experts to determine what the proper way to analyze and represent fiber, dietary fiber on the pet food label was. So the early discussions by nutrition experts weighed very thoughtfully whether crude fiber and total fiber needed to be co-represented, but thankfully, I think this is the right decision. It was decided that the most nutritionally appropriate value for fiber and the most appropriate analytical method for the label and value are derived from the AOAC method 991.43. I know that's a question that's come up a lot, but that is the decided upon method that most appropriately represents fiber for monogastric dogs and cats. So next slide. So we will get to this in more detail in October, but remember, carbohydrates are a calculated value. They will not have an analytical variance because they are not analyzed. They are not analyzed. It is not NFE. It is not SARCH as analyzed. It is a calculated value. Again, that is 100 minus the total of your protein, fat, ash, and moisture from your basic methodologies. So the next question is, okay, we're dropping crude fiber. So what is dietary fiber? I am still seeing confusion amongst the veterinary community around what fiber is. I was at a veterinary conference just 5 days ago where an esteemed colleague said, well, all fiber is the same. And it's not. You can look at this graph and see these are multiple different analytical methods. And each method or method grouping is represented by one of the ovals. Crude fiber would be a smaller component. It's not on this slide within that yellow-orange section that captures a very small amount of fiber, and it really wasn't nutritionally appropriate. But if you look at the large yellow to orange section, that's the total dietary fiber that we're talking about today, that captures what is the 991.43, which is both the components of many of the soluble and insoluble fiber fractions, but we are not being so hyper detailed as to capture the very low molecular weight oligosaccharides. So this is reasonable and rational for pet food. So I'm sure that was a little bit confusing. So on to the next slide. These are a lot of changes. We're dropping labeling, we're adding new nutritional components, we're adding a new nutritional analysis through dietary fiber, and it's a lot of new math. And I understand there's going to be a lot of questions around the calculations, which that is why we have the October seminar. So please sign up, please attend. We will cover in depth the needed calculations to get you through and fulfill your pet food, pet nutrition facts box relative to our macronutrients, total carbohydrates, and dietary fiber. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Rebecca.
Thank you, Leslie. Now that we've learned about the content of the information required in the facts box, I'm just going to review those rules on the formatting. So as we said earlier, the goal of this facts box, the label changes to the facts box, is to have a standardized format and look, and to make it easy for consumers, regulators, anyone looking at a pet food label to read and understand the information. So in regards to formatting, the color, so you're going to have the text and the lines all in one color on a neutral contrasting background. That could be your classic style that we're all familiar with from human food, the black text on the white background. It could be the reverse, white on black, or some other color combination, as long as the information is legible and you can read the information. That's the goal. We talked about the header. So there's been the change from guaranteed analysis to pet nutrition facts. That header must be at least 2 times the size of the other text in the box. And it also must be center aligned in the middle of that row. And then the rest of the text in the box must be all the same size and style. So that means no bolds, no italics, no different font types or sizes. It's all going to be the same. The hairlines used in forming your box are going to be the same weight, except for there's 4 spots you're going to have the bold lines. So that's above and below your calorie content box. So that's the 3rd row from the top. And then above and below your notes and disclaimers box, which is your 2nd last box. So 4 horizontal bold lines. There's also some indentation and text justification requirements. So for the indentation, those are indicated by the blue arrows. You have the calorie, your macronutrient calories for protein, fat, and carbohydrates. That row is going to be indented beneath your calorie content to show that these are components of the total calories. And then also you have the dietary fiber and dietary starch and sugars. If you include those are going to be indented beneath your total carbohydrate row to show, again, these are components of total carbohydrate. And then for the text justification or alignment, besides the header, almost all of your information is going to be aligned to the left side of the box, except for these 3 items indicated by the red arrows. Your weight per household unit is going to be right justified to the edge of the box. And then also your guarantee percentages and amounts per household unit are going to be also aligned to the right side of their box. We talked about the calculated value note. So the dagger symbol on your calorie statement or on the total carbohydrates, that note for the dagger symbol and the calculated value is going to be placed after your last guarantee, after that bold line. And then you might see the non-essential nutrients. If you include any nutrients that are not recognized as essential by the AFCO nutrient profiles, that rule regarding the disclaimer has not changed. You still need the asterisk at the end of the nutrient, and then the associated disclaimer, not recognized as an essential nutrient, etc., that would be placed after the calculated value note in the 2nd last box there. Next slide, please. Regarding the nutritional adequacy statement, the language for complete foods that you're familiar with has not changed. The verbatim statement with your product name and the appropriate life stage. That nutritional adequacy statement language has not changed. However, there is a new change regarding the placement of that, because previously it might have been hard for a consumer to find it on a product because there was no specified place to look for it. So the idea now is it's going to be in the same spot on every pet food label, which will be at the bottom of your nutrition facts box. Oh, can you go back? I got to talk about the snacks, treats, and supplements. There has been a change for treats, snacks, and supplements. Previously, these products did not require a nutritional adequacy statement. There has been a change now that they do require this verbatim statement shown on the screen, which is, this product is intended for intermittent or supplemental feeding only, and that'll go again at the bottom of your facts box. Next slide, please. All right, we've had a lot of information, and maybe take a little break to see if you guys have been following what I've been saying about the formatting. There's 5 items in this example that are incorrect, and I'll give you maybe 30 seconds to see if you can pick them out. If you want to drop them in chat or just keep them in mind, we'll point them out in the next slide.
Does anybody have the answer to this? What is incorrect?
Yeah,
Looks like we are getting
the
header is
header.
incorrect. Our per cup column should be right justified.
That's right. There's 3
Anything?
more.
3 more, Rebecca says.
Yeah,
Missing some indents. Improper indenting.
yeah.
Glucosamine is bold when it shouldn't be. One
One
more?
more. Anyone?
Come on, guys. You can do it. Oh, there's no explanation for the asterisk.
That's right. All right.
Excellent.
Sounds like we got them all. Wanna, yeah, highlight them. Yeah, so the header should be, we wanna move forward one more. It has the little notes. But yeah, there we go. The header must be 2 times the size of the rest of the text. You got that. Nutrient amounts, that's not correctly justified, should be right justified. The indentation on dietary starch and sugars, those should be indented along with the dietary fiber. There's a random bold on there, on the glucosamine there, that wouldn't be compliant. And then that final non-essential nutrient disclaimer is missing. So good job, guys. With that, I'll pass it off to Jennifer to talk about size considerations. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right, so one important element of the new nutrition fact box revolves around size considerations and configurations for small and very small packaging. The next few slides will address how label content can be adapted to different package sizes while maintaining readability and compliance with regulatory requirements. So this first slide is going to show an example of for small packaging. The size requirement is going to be a total printable area of more than 12 square inches and less than or equal to 40 square inches. The text size should be no smaller than 1/16 inch. Font color should be black or one color type. And all text needs to be the same size and style. However, with the exception of the pet nutrition facts or pet specialty pet nutrition facts, and that should be bolded. So looking at the example, here are some noticeable differences in comparison to the nutrition fact box. So one is that it's a paragraph linear format. Some of the nutrients here are abbreviated like carbohydrates, and then you'll also see the total carbohydrates and dietary fiber are also abbreviated. And this abbreviated format is still, again, it's going to include the nutritional adequacy statement and all the required information included in the nutrition fact box that we've been previously discussing. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now for this one, we're going to be looking at for very small packaging, and the size requirement is even smaller. The total printable area is less than 12 square inches. But like the small packaging, the text size should be no smaller than 1/16 inch. Color should be black or one color type, and all the text needs to be the same size and style with the exception of the heading of the nutrition facts. As you can see from the example, this format is even further abbreviated than what we just looked at. One key difference is the nutrition facts. It's labeled nutrition facts versus pet nutrition facts. Calories and calculated are abbreviated. And then the values are also listed in grams. But note that the grams of the guaranteed nutrients should be the total grams in the container. And another thing to note too is that, since very small packaging is really meant to be a single serve item, you'll notice that there's no nutritional adequacy statement. And that's why this nutrition facts is so limited. All right, next slide. So this last slide outlines some key callouts regarding total printable area. Now, while calculating the total printable area is not fully defined, here are some recommendations for substantiation that you might want to keep on file, especially to show how the total printable area was calculated and why the packaging fits into one category or another. So whether it would fit into a small or a very small packaging. Total printable area, typically it's going to include the whole area within the print die lines. That would also include the UPC code and lot code areas. It would not include any overlap areas that we would typically see with labels on cans or like the shrink wrap labels on cups, etc. And then finally, another further consideration would be for treats in clear packaging or those single like chew type sticks. So the first one, the hanging tags that you would see like on a clear packaging, the area of that hand tag would be the typical printable area. And then if it's only like a shrink wrapped chew stick with a sticker, the sticker would be that total printable area. And that concludes my section. Thank you, everyone.
Wow, a lot of information in a short amount of time, and I'm so proud of how everybody did on the pop quiz. I'm Carolyn Orr with Pet Food Institute, and I want to remind you that on your invitation this week, you should have got a little notice to a survey. Everybody that you have seen over the last 3 months that have been training you are going to be working together to develop an in-person label laboratory, a sharing and training session. They'll be in person and scheduled for February 18th and 19th. We are making the plans now, but we need to kind of get an idea of how many people want to attend so we know what location how big a location we have to have. There will be a charge for this in-person institute. That will only be to cover the expenses of the people involved in the meals. So it will be as minimal as we can keep it. And we would actually invite you to send teams from your company of people who are required to do regulatory work or label design. The program will begin at noon on the 18th and end on noon on the 19th of February. And it'll be at a location, it'll be one hop, hopefully from almost everybody's airport, so we won't do double flights. And we do not have anything online or anything. There's a question just popped up. Do we have anything on page online? We don't have anything online yet until we had this survey answered. So we know how many people are involved. If we're having 50 or 100 or 200 people, we need to get an idea of how many people want to be involved. So if you would fill out this survey over the next couple of days and let us know, then we can set up a website for it and get you more information on it. Reminder that the next webinar is going to be very complex. It is calculations, and it will take a lot of effort and energy from all of us. So let's go ahead and put in your chat box now the questions you have for this webinar, or go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your questions. And we'll move to Patrick Fulling to take questions.
Hey, Carolyn, do you think you could put a link to that in this chat box for quick reference?
Yep, I will
To sign
grab it
up.
and throw it up there.
So far, not seeing any questions. Our presenters must have knocked it out. All right, not seeing any questions, Carolyn. I'll kick it back over to you to close it out.
Carolyn is, yeah.
That's
she's
an
gonna-
awful long link. I just put up, it's an awful long link, but it should also be, it's on the invitation you got today for the thing. You also get it, it will be put up again when we put up the webinar, the recording webinar, the YouTube address for the webinar. So we'll put it up there again. But if you just look at the invitation you got for today's webinar, it's at the bottom of that invite. It's a very long link that comes up.
And I want to thank every one of you that have committed to working through this online, and working together as a team, to the staff and to our volunteer members. I can't thank you enough for what you've done to your commitment to pet food industry, Pet Food Institute, and the pets that we feed. So thank you all, and look forward to seeing you on the next call.
Thank you, everyone. I can't believe there's no questions.
A slide on the next one. I think that is the last
Kelly,
slide
will
on
you
the
put up the
deck.
slide for the next one?
There we go. October the 16th, Wednesday.
There's two more of these, one on when in October and one in November. And the one in November will be on the ingredient statements. And then we'll have the sharing the in-person label laboratory in February. Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day.
Great, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.